All right, guys, here today, show is brought to you exclusively by Adentia Herbals. It is a supplement that I've been taking for the past 3 weeks. They're a new sponsor of the show with BioMind. So it's a powerful synergy of 9 remarkable plants and mushrooms, each thoroughly studied in peer-reviewed research for their cognitive enhancing potentials and safety profiles. They've blended organic, full-spectrum powders with potent, standardized extracts taken from the most desirable parts of each plant and mushroom. This unique formula respects the balanced molecular harmony of nature while prioritizing the known cognitive-enhancing compounds of each ingredient at the ideal ranges and concentrations. Pipe rind extract from black pepper is included to increase gut absorption and oral bioavailability, and they personally mediate every other bottle with the specific intention of improving mind and life of each recipient. Whether you're looking for a natural supplement to aid with studying, creative entrepreneurship, sport focus, prolonged concentration, or just optimum daily mind function, there is truly no cognitive supplement like this one. And I did want to say that I can attest to that. In the past 3 weeks, I have been remembering things that I've repressed. Not always good memories, but it's just, I've had a clarity that it's just a clear life difference. So I want to thank Adentia Herbals. The links in all that will be in the description below. And I highly encourage everyone and anyone who's looking for an all-natural, no caffeine added supplement made from only the finest ingredients. You don't have to spend a ton of money, all these brand name, big name supplements. You can do it with a local business, with a small, locally owned, and a great company. Adentia Herbals is just absolutely amazing, and I highly recommend it.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet, I ask you, is not an alien force already among us?
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
Now I am become the destroyer of worlds.
In my association with Project Blue, they definitely withheld information.
The whole fleet of them was on the ASA. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely.
Welcome to the show, ANJALI.
Hi, how are you?
ANJALI. I keep it's
ANJALI.
yeah, and so I'm sorry. Now it's going to be stuck in my head both ways. But
Yep.
I'm so excited to have you here today,
Me
and
too. My
truly, it's really something. I mean, any experiencer. And I did want to say that you are a DOD intel officer, with a lifelong of experiences
Yes.
and experiences with what we would call now non-human intelligence. And today we're going to dive into your story pretty deeply. And what's crazy, I find, is that the last few interviews I've done with people are very high in government and high in military positions, and just the credibility that it gives you guys coming forward and telling your stories is something that we shall not waver on, and it shouldn't be something that is used against anyone. Their their history. It baffles me when we try to find the flaw in each of these people coming forward when
Absolutely.
this is what we've been asking for
That's right.
80 plus years, and now that it's happening, people can't see that it's actually happening, and I feel like they're in denial in a way. And so I want to say thank you for your service in government, and I want to say thank you for having the courage to step forward with your story.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me, Ty. I really appreciate it. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm glad that Nikki Starchild was able to facilitate our connection. I think that's wonderful. So,
she's wonderful.
Yeah, shout out to Alien Girl 111. But it's my pleasure to be here. We probably should have done this sooner, but everything is right on time in the grand scheme. And so, I'm glad to be here today.
So what I really wanted to start off with is, I want to start off with, first off, how you got into government in your early life. And, had you that side of who are you, right? And, did you always have an interest in, the wonders of the universe, and how did that drive you in your career?
So many questions all at once.
Yeah, it is. It's a big intro.
Yeah. Okay. So, who am I? Well, I am the daughter of a complex woman and a complex family. I wouldn't say that all of my life I've had interest in the phenomena or non-human intelligence, UFOs, the paranormal, the phenomena in general, as we usually call it. But I have always scratched that. When I was 4 years old, I had my first memorable conscious and physical contact with aliens, as most people would have called them back then. They were the very typical sort of shape, size, the features of the larger eyes and the very visual nose and mouth. Began
like the Greys.
I think that's
is that a good way to say to describe them? Or
well, I would say no, only because their skin wasn't gray. And I certainly had a very positive experience. So I wouldn't attribute it in even the same manner as a lot of other people have, who have had contact with the beings that we often call Greys. But so let me just back up a little bit. When I was 4 years old, I woke up in my bed and was running down my hall. It was night. And something had woken me up, and suddenly I was inside of, I was just somewhere else. Okay. Let me tell you, as my 4-year-old mind, brain, body, everything, memory, experienced it. Okay. I was suddenly in a different place. Like I had been running down the hall one moment, and the next moment I'm in a different place. And I'm surrounded by these beings that are very interested in me. Some of them, I think, they either had on clothes, like they were actually physically wearing them, or they wanted me to see them that way. But most of them were unclothed. There were what I would call adult, higher, I can't tell you how large they were. I was 4. I was pretty tiny, so they looked
Yeah.
pretty tall to me,
No
Um,
matter what, they were going to look
yeah,
pretty tall.
yeah. And
So,
and they
uh,
did.
did they
But
look like you and I?
no, no. So they had like a tannish, almost purplish lavender look about them. Okay. As for their skin, all of them were hairless. There was no hair visible anywhere. Spindly arms, spindly legs, spindly neck, oversized head and cranium, large, kind eyes, kind face, expressions of happiness and joy and friendliness. No one spoke out loud to me, but I could hear them.
So,
So that would have been my first memorable instance of what I would call conscious communication or conscious contact, when they're communicating directly from consciousness to consciousness or from mind to mind. I'm not really sure exactly, how that is facilitated, but
right.
it's definitely begun on their side.
Yeah.
So,
And that's something that that is consistent in experiencer stories. That there's just it's overwhelming. We can convict a person of murder on less testimony than we have for various areas of the phenomena. So that's what makes me really just kind of blown away that I think Michio Kaku says it best, is the burden is now on the debunker to say this isn't happening, because it is just overwhelming. So, now, did you live with that memory, or is this something that was accessed after?
Let me tell you what I lived with, and the memory that I lived with, and then, but I haven't told you what they said yet.
Oh,
do you want to know what they said?
I would. I more than anything in my yes.
They that's like the most fascinating part, but actually, for me, but for most people in the disclosure movement, the second part of it is where a lot of people try to focus initially, because it's the nuts and bolts part. But let me start with what I experienced and what I think I was inside of a craft, but I could have been anywhere, to be honest. I just was no longer in my home. Boom, I'm there. We're caught up. And there are adults that are approaching. There are groups of children of various ages. I would say from 2, 3 years old, or around my age, to 10 at the oldest, probably. The children looked more human. Some of them looked more human than others, but none of them could pass as a human. Meaning they still had they retained the trait of the skin color and the hairlessness, and the oversized eyes and the smaller mouths, but their eyes were not like the adults. Okay. So they had, it was like having, if you just took human eyes and made them too large in the face, there were some that looked like that, some that had retained the other trait from the adults, the adult beings who were there. But they were picking at my clothes, kind of like pinching it and pulling it a little bit. They would pinch and touch my skin and touch my hair. I was hearing a lot of giggling. I can't tell you if any of that was actually auditory, but I feel like some of it was. like it was auditory. It wasn't just, a consciousness communication. I felt, looking back, I feel like
that there were actual sounds made.
That there were actual sounds being made, whereas the adults, there were no sounds being made, none of them.
Maybe it's so again, maybe it is something that is developed, even with species.
This is what they said to me that night. They, the adults told me that they were my family, and that they had been using the eggs from women in my family, and that I'm not the only one, but they were just telling me about me because they were looking for compatibility where we could retain certain traits, but yet appear to be human and blend in.
Wow.
So that they could live here on Earth, so that their consciousness could be placed in these bodies because they have different energetic needs. And I don't know. I have some suspicions. I'm going to hold back on those right now.
Yeah, that's fine.
But so they said that they essentially had to manipulate and combine DNA from them and my maternal line to, and they had been playing with it, and that these were like my siblings and cousins, and that this was my other family, and that we share DNA, but they didn't quite pass. And so they wanted to know that they wanted me to know that they were there, and that I had another family, and they wanted me to know who I was. Okay. So,
as a 4-year-old, how do you take that in?
Okay.
Or is it the opposite of what we think? You're more receptive to it.
Okay. So, if I forget to answer anything, please, prompt me.
Yeah, no. You're sorry. Sometimes I think out loud.
It's okay. Me too. What I remembered for most of my life was something different. Okay. It was, I'm running down the hall, and I continue running down the hall, and I jump onto the back of the couch, and I am like looking over the back of the couch. I'm just 4 years old, and I'm looking out these windows that are to the front yard that overlook, or that can look into the carport and the driveway and the neighborhood and the tree in the front yard and my pool, full of toys out there, and the bushes that were right there. That's what I would normally be able to see is, a normal neighborhood in the 1970s, 1976-ish. I believe that it occurred in 1976. So when I reached the window, what I see and what woke me up, I think, was that it was suddenly really bright outside. The house was full of light, but it was night. And my mother and other people who lived in our home were outside looking up above our home at a craft that was there, part of which I could see. And everybody in the neighborhood is out.
And looking at this thing.
Looking at this thing. Okay. And my last conscious memory of it is a different perspective, where suddenly I can see, like I'm standing in the middle of the street, and I can see what's above our home. So while I'm looking out the window at them, I get this flash of what it looks like from a different perspective. So I see everything. Okay.
Safe to say you might have been astrally projected somehow.
Or they just showed me. I don't know. Was it an intentional remote view, or did they?
Ooh, that's a good point. That's a good point.
So, so this event was talked about for years in my family. Okay. Of course, I remembered. I've always, there was never a time that I did not remember the craft above our home. Okay. And what it looked like, and everybody standing out there. And we talked about it. Everyone, I would say at least once a year, my entire life.
At like family gatherings, stuff like that,
That's
right?
right. Family
Right.
gatherings, friends. There were friends who were there that night, who are still in our family. You know what I mean? Like they're friends of the family still,
Mhm.
and they still remember all of this. And what my mother and one particular woman that I've had the pleasure to speak directly to, who I've known, but I grew up and moved away and had an adult life, and we reconnected after my press conference in 2021.
2020.
Yeah, 21.
Yeah.
Yeah,
2021. Sorry.
yeah. It's okay, no worries.
The pandemic. It was all one blur.
Yeah, right.
I wish I could have been there. Oh man, because I would have been. I would have been.
Yeah, it's okay. You can find it anywhere. So
yeah. But there's nothing like that in person. That electricity,
yeah.
So
And I did take a few questions that day, which was interesting because it was
yeah.
just actually I was in the flow state with them, and I just every step knew exactly what to say. It was quite extraordinary.
It's so
So
that's why I told you, like the first time I saw you was, so I had these guys on from Dockside Media. Shout out Dockside Media. They made this movie called Constant Contact, and it
yeah, Tyler,
centers
the other
the other Tyler. It centers around your speech, and
oh, I haven't seen it.
it's it's amazing. It's
Wow,
amazing.
no idea.
They got it's the way they wove it into the story. It was just, they did a really good job, and I really highly recommend it. I'm making my first, I went to film school, so now I'm making my first feature length documentaries right now. And I would love to we could talk off air about this. Well, let's get back into the interview. But yeah, so
That's really funny that's how you were introduced to me, because I was so uncooperative with that poor man, with Tyler from Dockside Media, and he was nothing but kind, and
he's a very sweet person,
trying to be nothing but accommodating. But I was so shy and afraid of everyone because I just didn't know the environment I stepped into. It was like I felt like I was standing on a landmine, and that if I moved, everything was just going to explode around me.
Right.
Boom, it's over. So I was just like, it was almost like I had decisional paralysis. I literally couldn't move my mind to think about doing a documentary. It terrified me.
And I think with how it ended up and turned out, I think it was good, and it was a good representation. They painted you in a very, very good light, and
that's very good.
I think you should watch it. I do, but that's for another time. But I mean, it does. So when did you get into intelligence, and how did you end up working with the DOD, and taking that path?
Sure. Well, I grew up in the South, and we have some genetic issues in our family. My mother had to be medically retired early. So she was a single mom. I'm not sure if I already said that. So, money wasn't something we had a lot of. And I understood that I needed to have options A, B, C, and D moving forward with my life, so
Right.
that if one safety net or one plan didn't work out, there would always be another plan.
Mm.
And I mean this like professionally, with schools, with careers, with anything that I get involved in professionally that affects my livelihood. I always knew A, B, C, and D. So I at first I was very athletic. Athleticism runs in our family as well, particularly long distance running and sprinting. Speed at sprinting was something that we are good at in my family. It's quite fun, and so that was my first thought. Was I would run starting at about age 10. I would run several miles a day. We lived out in the country, and I would play in an area that we called the flats, because it was an area of a wooded area that had old roads that were probably used for foresting back in the day, logging,
Right.
maybe hunting. They were, just a little bit bigger than a game trail, really. And it was a very flat area. So if it rained, it was just, you're like standing in a marsh.
Right.
So we just called it the flats. But the flats were actually quite interesting. I had a number of experiences, not all of them alone, and involving what I would call the phenomena. But I would run the flats and play in the woods. Growing up in Florida, we had vines that would grow down out of trees, and you can literally pull on them and swing across rivers and lakes, or streams and lakes.
Right.
And we had water running through our property. So that was me. I was the child who was always outside, didn't want to be inside. If I was inside, I usually had a book in my hand, or I was writing.
Sounds like you're an explorer, not just of the physical nature, but of the mental nature from a young age.
Yes, I would also climb as high as I could up into trees, and I would get in a comfortable position and with whatever book I was reading at the time, and I could stay up there for hours. It just didn't bother me. So that was kind of where I hailed from, and my mother had been a very good runner also when she was young. But I mentioned that by the time I was in high school, she was medically retired. And so she was already experiencing some physical ailments that began to hit me around the age of 15 was the first time that I really felt it, that I felt like I didn't have the energy to go for a run. And that just didn't make sense to me because that was what I had always done.
Yeah.
And it scared me because I thought that I was going to go to college on a full ride for running, for the running scholarship. I didn't care if it was going to be cross country or track or both. That was my plan. And then suddenly it was like 2 years into puberty. Something kicked in genetically and my kidneys started struggling. And I had several kidney infections. I was breaking out into rashes all the time. I was having like really serious allergic reactions. I just started missing a lot of school. And so suddenly I'm pretty scared. And so I decided, well, I'm going to do what most poor Southern kids do, and that is I'm going to plan for the military. And so I didn't want to go in as an enlisted, I had planned on getting a scholarship and going, into Air Force ROTC at the collegiate level and using that to become a commissioned officer. So with that in sight, I decided I would participate in the Air Force Junior ROTC program at my high school, which became one of the top ones in the nation. And we'll talk about that some other time.
but it's amazing that you had the perseverance to adapt to your environment and understand that, listen, there's no future in what I thought there was going to be.
That's right.
And to have that, again, that preparedness as young as you did, that's a testament to your willingness to fight and to not to not let things phase you.
Yes. I would say when I was...
You're exactly what the government wants.
Well, yes.
Yeah. I guess it turned out a little different than they expected, but
so let me first say there was a comment that you made a moment ago. And basically, I think you were trying to talk to me about tenacity, and
yes.
and I do consider myself to be very adaptable. It's also been something that's always been a part of all of my interviews. I am adaptable to the circumstances around me, while also always seeking, to improve standard operating procedures, to take it to the next level. What can we do to be better, to do better, to think better in the first place? I was always that person. And so as it turned out, I did stick with the Air Force Junior ROTC. I was accepted into space camp, did not go because I know, right? We couldn't afford it. And my pride stepped in. One of my best friends had also been accepted, and we were going to go together.
Right.
And her parents had, they were well-to-do, and they offered to loan it to my mother, or I think they wanted to give it to her to just pay for my camp. But I think she was insisting on a loan, and I wasn't comfortable with it. Like,
right.
I just thought, this is not how I do this. I can't have my mother borrowing money from my best friend's parents. Like, this just sounds like a recipe for destruction. So I said no. And it was really tough. It was
the opportunity. Yeah, it's okay though.
It kept our relationship steady, over the years, and that was good. I think that was, in the long term, that was more important than me going to space camp. What's interesting about that is that while I was in college, I was going to school where I was stationed. I had been stationed in South Dakota. And so I was on the western side of the state at Ellsworth Air Force Base, an old...
I know Ellsworth.
Yeah, I bet you do.
What years were you there?
I was there from 92 to, I didn't leave the area until 2003.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. But I was out of the...
Do you know a gentleman named Mario Woods? I'll tell you a story.
Are you talking? Hold up a second. Are you actually talking to me about Mario Woods from South Dakota State University?
Yeah.
A sociologist?
No.
Are you sure?
Yes, 100%.
How old is Mario?
So he's an old... I don't know how old Mario is. but no, he was enlisted at Ellsworth, and he responded to he was a military police officer who responded to a breach at Ellsworth Air Force Base. And when he came upon the nuclear missile silo, codenamed November 5, there was a gaseous ball of light, and the atmosphere in the truck got really thick. His partner was in like this stasis, and he's trying to get out of the car, but before he does, he's trying to climb out the window, and he succumbs to the whatever the thickness was, and he passes out. And the next thing he knows, he wakes up. The car is physically miles away from the missile site after responding to this school bus sized gaseous ball of light hovering over the missile silo. He later goes on to talk in a regression about abduction. But
what year is this, Ty?
1970 something. 70. So it's ironic that you brought up Ellsworth, because I wanted to know, as someone who was there, did you know anything about this?
I was just going to tell you that I have heard that story. I heard so many stories about Ellsworth Air Force Base and contact with the phenomena there. I had multiple experiences myself while I was there. Two that I will just very quickly tell you. One is I was standing in my living room, and a ball of light came streaking down and past my house and down this, like, it's like a waterway that was usually empty, and it's, on each side there's a neighborhood. And so it just came down, and it was huge, bright light. Just everything turned white, and it was gone so fast. The first thing I did is I called the tower, of course, and asked them if they saw anything. And so I called the tower. I don't know if I was the first one to call or what, but as soon as he answered the phone, I said, "What the hell is that?" He said, "Did you?" And we just were screaming at each other on the phone because we were so excited.
Right.
In 1994 or 95. Well,
something's going on there.
That's right.
Something's going on there.
It was really something. I also had multiple friends who worked the missile silos when we still had the nuclear missiles there, who saw all sorts of unexplained phenomena and lights and beings, craft, and
which is something I do want to talk to you about when we get to it.
Sure.
So we could put a pin in the nuclear conversation, because I think you might be able to shed some insight into that realm.
Okay.
So all right. So backing up. You're at Ellsworth Air Force Base.
Yes. Okay. So.
And,
where did you want me to pick up about my other contact there, or did you want me to?
Whatever the next phase of the story was. Okay. I think you were saying. Was that why you were bringing up Ellsworth, to bring up those contacts?
Well, you were asking me how I ended up in Intel, and honestly, this all connects. How did I end up in Intel? Southern Christian poverty. There you go. Southern Christian poverty. That's how I ended up in Intel. If it hadn't been for those things, who knows what I would have, how I would have chosen a different path. I don't know. I may have ended up doing the same thing. But it certainly, what inspired me throughout my life was not to repeat patterns that were in our family. Little did I know that when you're dealing with a genetic illness, it can be very difficult. It suddenly all made sense about this hereditary poverty that we seem to have,
Mm.
and it made sense. There was a lot of illness in my family, and this was just on my mother's side. So I knew
It's
that. I reached a point where I realized that enlisting was my only option. I received several partial scholarships, even a couple of full scholarships to different universities prior to me enlisting, but still, like, we couldn't cover like the books and the university fees. Like, there were going to be things that we just couldn't cover. It was like something was going to suffer, and all of them were out of state, which meant that I couldn't live at home. I had to, work in the dorm. So you can cover someone's tuition, but they still have all of their university fees and books and supplies. Plus, as a freshman, you're mostly required to live on campus unless,
on
for
campus. Yeah.
yeah. So they get you, they just nickel and dime you. And so here I was with these opportunities, none of which I could seize because we just didn't have the means to make it work.
And that's
So
such a problem. That's
yeah,
the problem.
yeah, that's
Is
why
there's
that
no
is,
opportunity.
yeah.
We like to think that in this country there's something called the American dream. And yes, at one point maybe that was attainable. In the 40s and the
Mhm.
50s and
Whose dream though? Wasn't my dream.
yeah,
40s and
but
50s certainly weren't my
yeah.
dreams.
Well, no, I'm saying maybe it was a reality then that you could go from poverty to being somebody. But the more
Right.
institutionalized we became, the
That's right.
less opportunity for the unfortunate or the misplaced,
That's
right?
right. Yeah, that's right.
Even in a town like mine, where I grew up, where we were, Division One, and we had a lot of funding. Um,
Yeah.
there was opportunity, but
Mhm.
and I got a great public education, from the Bill recommend. Um, um, I did,
Right.
and I didn't take advantage of it. But in college, I paid for it. I literally paid for my mistakes in high school and
Mhm.
college. So, it's a vicious circle, and
Like having to take
that's
a class twice or something,
yeah,
or yeah,
like
it comes
God,
back at
yeah, and people don't, it's just I don't know. That's a conversation again that's more political, and
yeah.
I know that they've Massachusetts actually just passed a law where, like if you're past a certain age and you want to go back to school, like at a community college, they'll pay for your tuition.
Oh,
So I
that's
think that's pretty cool.
fantastic.
Yeah. So
Massachusetts is
there are new programs and stuff like that. There's hope. What we need to do is we need to um, we do need to get rid of the geriatric um, um, political system that we have. It is old fashioned in a world where everything is changing on a daily basis. It's they're out of their league, and it's no offense to them, and maybe um, it's okay to say that we need younger people in these positions of, like in Congress and in the Senate, and with that comes a different set of I don't know. I don't want to get into this too far, but
no, I see what you're saying. You're saying like out with the old guard sort of
right.
thing.
They're, they're just not equipped to handle the rapid change in life that is happening. Look before us, AI. It is something that that. Do we expect Mitch McConnell to really understand artificial intelligence? To Nancy Pelosi, do we expect these people to really understand what's going on and to make laws and make um, uh, processes regarding these things. It's far too advanced, and it at some time, and that's why I think term limits they need to be a thing.
I could agree with that. I agree with.
But that's
I always
again,
agree
that's
with term limits.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's political. So
but
I don't mean to go on that rant, but
no, it's okay. I just, I would say that even if you get rid of, as you put it, even if you phase out, those who have been in political power for decades through various means, you phase them out and you put younger people in. Okay, and we're talking all democratically. Okay, so we're just, I say phase out, so we're not talking like an all at once everything turns over, because we can't sustain that either.
right.
That's unsustainable. But if we, that's not going to change the system in the long term. All that does is it keeps the same families with the same power and the same hidden wealth and influence in the same positions that they've been in. All we do is we have a turnover of younger congressmen and women and senators who come in to replace them, and they will fall to the same system that all of them fall to. We're really in quite the pickle.
Yeah, we are. And in your time in intelligence, is there anything that you can recall that stood out as far as the phenomenon, and because I do want to go back to you into your story, but during your time as when you became what you inevitably became, was it the job that you loved, that you expected it to be? Because I think most people would think that, like, you're a spy, you're this, you're that, right? You're out there as an operative and hidden in the world. But what was it like as a DOD and intel officer?
Well, there are multitudes of things to do as a DOD intel officer. You can have a fully immersed boots on the ground, or you can work in the Secretary of Defense's office. There's a wide range of things that intelligence officers do. So, and there's a lot of cross training. That's always a positive thing. Every intelligence officer is considered deployable. It's a deployable position, so you have to agree to that. And yeah, most people don't understand that, but if they have the right to deploy you. And in matters of national security and in times of American interests being threatened abroad, or in the strengthening of new bonds, sometimes deployment is needed.
It's necessary.
I would go ahead.
I said it's necessary.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I can't remember what I was going to say, but
yeah. So you were saying that at any time you kind of sign this waiver that you are deployable in these
agreement, basically, yeah,
specific situations. Yeah, and that's understandable.
It's a deployable position, so you have to understand that, and you work very closely with various aspects of active duty military. So we were immersed together. We weren't separated, by civilian employee, defense contractor, active duty, employee. None of that was separated. We were all very immersed together in, in unison of mission and understanding of what we were trying to accomplish. So it was the experience that I thought it would be. It was unfortunate for me. My time in DC was cut short due to an illness that I acquired while I was there. And it was very unfortunate. When I presented my resignation, they did not accept it. And
they do that?
Right? That's what I said. I said, can you do that? And they said, yeah.
You signed Did you sign a contract?
So, well, I mean, when you sign on the dotted line to the government. So essentially, I was able to move over into a defense contract position. So I was no longer a federal officer. Now I was, purely civilian defense officer.
So your badge color changed.
Yeah, but for a while, none of my accesses did, because I was still working the same. Well, there were specific accesses of programs that I was read into at the Pentagon that, they always keep how many people can be read in at a particular time limited. And so they can, control who knows what, so that if something goes out, they know exactly, they can narrow it in. So
compartmentalization.
Yes, absolutely. And so I was read out of some of that, but otherwise, all of my clearances and everything held the same. I was working with the same division, just doing a different aspect offsite. So, yeah,
awesome.
Yeah,
and, it sucks to leave a job that you love. So what years did let me I just want to get the timeline here again. So you're in 96, you were at Ellsworth?
1992 to I lived on base until 97, and I was in the area until 2003 or 2002.
Okay.
I can't
and
remember.
Then from Ellsworth, you go to
10 or 11 years I was there. Well, some of those years I was in college at Black Hills State University. I stayed in the area. It was just down the street, as the crows fly, just down the street. And then I went to grad school, and then I was recruited out of grad school to the Defense Intelligence Agency, and I did some more grad schooling for a little bit while they were doing all the security clearances. And then I hoofed it over to DC. And I was there until 2006, was on a contract till 2009, and started another contract in 2015, and ended that in 2016 due to my illness. So
another till 2015, ended 2016. So
in 2016, I spent 2017 and 2018. Basically, I did some work for startups, but it was for people that I knew.
Minimal.
Yeah, and it wasn't. I didn't want to be reimbursed for it. I just wanted, to keep my skills going, basically, was what I was thinking. And then I got to a point, exactly. Then I got to a point where it just wasn't, the stress of it wasn't sustainable enough for me anymore.
Right.
Yeah. And so I gave that up altogether. So it says that I still take consults, but the truth is that I wouldn't right now. Right. It would have to be a very, very specific kinds of consultation. I guess there are some consultations we give.
Well, listen, I think ending. So your last, you get out in 2016, and the next year, would change the course of humanity, in my opinion. The article, albeit riddled with mistakes, right? They didn't know any better. I think they chose to leave things in. They elected to leave things out. They got the program names wrong, and it really all focused on Elizondo when he was running the program when it was basically unfunded at that point, and essentially you're
running
right.
a program that we're not going to give you resources.
Right, that had no resources left. It was running on the bare bones. It was a basic. It was the 22 million was awarded to Allsap, which Bigelow bid for the contract. By the time that Lou got there, it was in the last stages of it was crumbling at that point. So they focused this whole huge, and it was a giant article. Don't get me wrong; it changed the course of ufology and general interest in this field.
Absolutely.
But 2017 happens. Where are you, and what are you thinking when you see this happen in the New York Times?
You're gonna love this. I didn't know.
You didn't know?
No, because
for how long did you not know?
I didn't really know about Lou until 2020.
Okay.
And that's because in January of 2017, I was hospitalized. And
I was going to say,
it was,
you're dealing with your medical issues at this point, right?
That's right. And I was very stressed.
That makes sense.
I was trying to keep my skills up while not watching the news at all. I didn't want to watch the news at all because it was stressing me out so much. I was so stressed trying to figure out what kind of work I could do to support myself, how I was going to support myself, how was I going to rehab? Would I rehab? Was I going to walk again? Would I ever be able to walk without assistance? All these things were going through my head. And so I was trying to figure out the rest of my life. And none of that involved the New York Times.
Right. Well, what's funny is we have like really similar stories in a way.
That's awesome.
It is. It's actually uncanny. It's just at different times because I unfortunately was someone who it took me from ages 20. I've been sober for 4 years, but for 3 years before that, I'd been an alcoholic since I was, as far as I'm concerned, from the first drink I had at 14 years old. I was an alcoholic. I wasn't an alcoholic at 14. It wasn't until 20 where the switch flipped. But the way I see it, I'm an alcoholic. I was an alcoholic always. It was just waiting to. It was
over
inside me, ready to explode, and it just took enough pressure building for it to happen. And I battled it for 3-4 years in programs where there's no TV, there's no cable, there's no news. So in that scenario, during those same years, I was doing the same thing. I did know about Elizondo, and I kept up on that stuff because I was allowed to have my phone like every, by the time I got into like the halfway house, I was allowed to have my phone, and I started to pick up on some of it, but I was closeted for the most part. And a podcast was not even in the question. This is nor was any of that. So we have these stories, but all right. So in 2020, we'll just skip ahead a little bit. In 2020, you how did this begin? How did you let people know that you were going to do a press conference? How does this whole story unfold? And how is it that you decide to come out with this with a story that I'd like you to tell us after,
Right.
if you wouldn't
Sure.
mind.
Well, so it actually started in 2017 at the end of the year. Well, I could argue that now looking back on my life, I can trace all of the different times that I had touch points with the beings, okay, in one aspect or another. But I wasn't consciously aware of it at the time. Now I have that awareness. And so I can look back and go, oh, there you are. Oh, yep. And there, and there, and there, So it's
Right.
quite
It
magnificent.
makes more sense. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But the culminating event, I would say, or maybe the beginning of the awakening for me, began when I was in ICU in January of 2017. It was the day after inauguration. I actually went in to ICU after watching the inauguration, and I have always remembered that. It's kind of funny, but within a couple of days, I was
Well, it was
really
quite a wild. It was quite. I mean, it was a spectacle.
right.
That's for sure.
It
Right.
was it stressed me out so much just watching that. And because I already had my feet very grounded in what was heading towards, for the US in the coming years.
Right.
And some of it still to come to fruition. Some of it already has.
Right. People, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you here, but people forget you had a vested interest and you worked directly with, these high level individuals with your job. And you had, you did your job as a patriot and for this country, and you had a vested interest in its prosperity. And, I don't want to
world. It's
right prosperity of the world. So at that moment, I could see for a lot of people that it was a disruptive change, and but I don't know. Look at it.
Yeah, we can talk about that some other time. I would be happy to talk to you about it because I have a lot of what I would consider insight. If you wanted to have a more I'm not going to call it political so much as a social look at the change and all of that.
I would love to have many conversations with you in many different styles. Like I said, we could talk about that off air, but yeah. So you're in the hospital. The last thing you remember is the inauguration.
There's a I'm in the ICU. I'm not doing well. And I'm being treated with some really high powerful, it's called IVIG, IV intravenous immunoglobulin therapy, which is like they take the immunoglobulin from thousands and thousands of people, and they literally flush your body with it. And it can make you very sick. It's very difficult while you're going through it. But it also saved my life. So, there's that. But so while all this was going on, my children were visiting, of course, and the ICU nurse was standing there, and there was another woman that was standing there, and she was standing by the wall near the window and the bathroom door, like between there. And she was just looking at me, but yet I was knowing things about her. And I told my nurse that there was an old woman next door who had died. And she said, "No, honey, nobody's died. You know, everybody's fine." And I said, "No, I'm talking to her right now. I'm telling you, she's passed." And she said, what do you mean you're talking to her? And it's like, well, she's standing right there. And they were like, nobody is standing there. And then
What the hell?
they call the code. You hear all her machines go off, and she passes away.
What the hell?
Yeah. And
That's
so that began
crazy.
like it was like they would stop in after they had passed, and they would come to see me and tell me that they had just left their bodies. And
Well, what's very interesting is now a lot of people know what began me on my path, and again, it's kind of weird, the synchronicity here. But this is a story that we talked about on the phone. Is I was in the room with my mother, and I remember looking at her at one moment, and I looked away, and I looked back down at my pants, and I think I was going to grab for my phone, and I realized I didn't have it with me. And when I looked up, if you, on a hot day, if you look down the highway, there's like that heat wave.
The
It was
mirage.
like this it was like this mirage dispersion blur. It crossed my vision field, and it went out the window.
And she was gone.
And when I looked back, she was gone. And I closed her eyes. And it was the most, and then my sister and brothers come running in, and it's overwhelming. But all of a sudden, but I had this weird feeling of clarity and strength, and it was weird, and
it's a beautiful story.
I don't know, and it set me on this path. I took 2 to 3 months off of podcasting because I used to interview actors, and I used to work with a very large cinema chain, AMC, and Showcase Cinemas, and I used to interview actors for them as well. So it was it was what I thought I wanted to do, but this moment in that room ultimately changed me. And funny thing is well, but we can get that another day. But again, it's a synchronicity. So you're seeing these. That's incredible.
Absolutely. And it was numerous times. I was there for 8 days. There were a lot of elderly people. And at one point we were full, and then I was the only other patient. So
Jesus.
they had a problem. And I think that a couple of people, I can't remember, may have been discharged, but we had many of them pass. And I remember several of them. I don't want to say that. Other people who were there can sometimes remind me of others who had come through. But it was really something. It was beautiful. I don't know what to say. I wasn't worried at that point. It just felt like maybe I was going to be slipping away.
Yeah.
But
so you thought you thought you might be going?
Oh yeah, that is what I thought. And it's actually, I didn't know this until later, but it's also what the doctor and ICU nurse thought. Because I was literally seeing everyone who was dying on the ward around me, none of which I had ever met in my life or knew or seen.
Right.
I didn't even
That's
know
pretty.
who was me. But as they passed away, I could tell you who it was. Not by name, but I could tell you.
But describe.
Exactly. And that they had just passed, and they were just coming by to see me. They were coming by to see me.
It's not. That's not. So that must have changed. So do you make like a miraculous recovery, or how do you get? Because you're out. You ended up out of ICU. Clearly,
I did.
So
I would say not miraculous. It took a lot of work.
So it took a lot of work. Okay, so
It's a work.
but you did. But you made a good recovery.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I think that in some ways every year, some things improve while other things deteriorate.
That comes with age as well.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I think that that's just the way it is.
Yeah, I'm 30. I've retained a lot of youthfulness. And I used to hate it, but now I'm so grateful for it. That, as I get older, I'm like, it's funny, right? Because when we're younger, we just aspire to be our adult selves, and then when we get older, we're like, if I could only go turn back time, right? But it sounds like these moments in the ICU really they had an impact on your journey and what happened next, because inevitably you meet these people.
That's
and
right.
I would like you to kind of walk us through
Sure.
if you don't mind, to bring us back to that scenario and how it unfolded, and
to
just
which scenario?
as much to the mountain.
Oh, okay.
And
Very
how because so you make a recovery, you come out of the ICU,
Yep.
you're
I'm back at
clearly
home.
having
I went to a rehab hospital. Then I went home. I spent 6 weeks in a physical rehabilitation hospital, trying to get walking again, and heal as much as I could with physical therapy and rehabilitation every day. And then I go home and I start. There were a couple of times that I heard someone, like a woman. I would hear her humming. I would hear her like saying my name. I would hear her walking through the house. Sometimes that sounded like there was literally like a chain between the wall. Like you could be in my room and then in the bathroom that was right next to mine. That was my primary bathroom. And in either one of those rooms, it sounded kind of like a chain being just like moved around, very metallic chain hitting things sound. I think we all kind of know what that sounds like. Very bizarre. Thought maybe we had a plumbing problem. I wasn't the only one to hear it. There were other people who were in the house that had experiences hearing the woman. We saw and heard a boy. There was a young boy who was coming to the house, or showing himself, and to multiple people. And then late in 2017, November timeframe, I had what I would call now, I didn't know what to call it then. I thought it was maybe a nervous breakdown. I really didn't know, because I had never experienced something quite this immersive. But there was I was watching a Netflix movie with my daughter. We were actually, I don't know if we had actually started watching it yet, or if we were just, looking around, kind of trying to figure something out, and petting our cat. We were in my bedroom, and literally out of nowhere, I got this amazing, like overwhelming sense of love and warmth, that I had never felt in my life. Like on this earth, and I was like, what is happening here? And I thought maybe I had had a seizure, right? Because I have epilepsy. And I thought, well, let's think about this. Did you just have a seizure? And then lo and behold, in the corner of my room, a being appears that appears to be about 4 foot high, with a lavenderish skin. I've drawn pictures of it, and I'll be more than happy to send that to you, Tyler, so you can put that in.
Overlay it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll send that to you. And the being began communicating to me, and my daughter's there, and I'm telling her, I'm asking her, can you see it? And she says, no, I don't see anything. And I said, am I hallucinating? And she said, well, I don't know what's happening. And so I said, well, the being is communicating with me. And so I just began telling her what was being communicated to me via this consciousness to consciousness. And we could spend probably an hour just talking on that message itself. There are places online that you can see those, and I can give you some links to some summaries.
That would be wonderful. Yeah.
They were telling me that there are some struggles that are coming that are facing us, facing humanity, and that the consciousnesses that are inhabiting this biotech need to begin awakening to the reality of their existence, rather than the illusion that's being projected to us. That we need to learn to communicate with each other, consciousness to consciousness. Not that we need to stop the spoken word, but that we need to be able to communicate, have conscious communication with one another, because there are going to be events that are coming up that will separate us technologically from one another in massive groups, and that in order to stay informed, we need to and to be able to communicate with each other across the globe, we will need to rely on conscious communication. And so he wanted us to begin preparing for that now, preparing to learn conscious communication, to be open to it, because it's really less about learning and more about being open and grounded, and more about your resonance and what you're resonating with, and to who you may come in contact with. He showed me, or he, she, they, honestly, I don't know. And I'm not really sure that it matters all that much. They showed me several other people, who they would appear in the room. But like 2 of them were in a different time. Like, so they appeared much like he appeared, like the being appeared in the corner of the room, meaning I'm seeing the being and I'm seeing where the being is geolocated, presumably. For all I know, it was all just a projection. But what I do know is that what they wanted to show was the being in a particular habitat, which looked like to be a craft with a particular astronomical planetary, I was assuming, could be a moon, could be a sun body. I believe that it's either a moon or a planet that was behind them. And then there was a gentleman that appeared from another time, a woman that appeared from another time, and then the child walked into the room, which for me felt like it was saying he is from the same time, because he walked right into the room, rather than appearing somewhere else. And so this was like our first, I want to say, really immersive, my conscious meet and greet, I guess you would say, where I was having an in-depth conversation with a being that I shouldn't have been able to communicate with, but that was there and was telling me things that I didn't understand. And at one point, I went into automatic writing, and all I did was I unfortunately I haven't been able to find it. I've been looking for it, but it was like I would make a dot, and then the pen would slide to another dot, and then it would slide again, dot dot, and make these little
I think
dots.
you're
Stop.
drawing constellation.
So I'm looking at it, and later my daughter and I are looking at it, and I'm trying to discern what the hell this is. And
Yeah.
I decided that I wanted to connect all the dots, and bend it in the order of the way that I had drawn it. So we put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, on all the dots to the order of it. And then we took jewelry wire, and I built like a 3D presentation of what I saw. And it was remarkable. We were visited a couple more times at the home before I went into the Mojave Mountain, into the base. So I had a couple of other in-person contacts where I was seeing a physical form, but I don't believe that it was actually physically there. And it was communicating with me. Here we are living in the Mojave Desert. We had one night, this is just kind of a woo-woo moment. We had an owl that was up in a tree, and we had a desert willow in the backyard, and there was an owl that was in the tree, which is odd because owls burrow in the desert. They aren't, there aren't tree owls in the desert. Now, so in the mountain areas of the desert mountains, yes, but where I was, it could have been just a stray owl, but we both noticed it, and we were like, wow, this is incredible. And then that turned into the being sitting on the branch, essentially, of this tree. Was the messages were very similar, the same, as, again, just kind of reiterating that I needed to prepare, and that we need to do this, and humanity needs to do this. And it was, again, reminding me that we're all consciously connected. And it was a very difficult time for me. I was, how should I say that, comforted by the fact that I wasn't the only one that would experience this phenomena. I was trying to figure out everything. At first, what I honestly thought was, I thought that I was probably the butt of an experiment. I thought that maybe I was being targeted by some kind of advanced technology from one of our foreign adversaries, and that I,
because that's got to be going through your mind as an
absolutely,
as an ex-intelligence officer, right? That's at least one possibility, is that you're being deliberately manipulated.
That's right. Absolutely. I can tell you that there's no way to rule that out either, is there?
Right.
There's no way to rule it out.
I would say at this point, probably not.
That's right. So it's
until
always
we can get back there.
That's right. That's right. So, next thing, there's the contact with the beings in their what I believe is an actual underground space. Now, at the same time, I've always wondered when I was a child, was I actually in the craft that was above our home, or is the craft a portal to somewhere else? Like when you're in the craft, are you really in the craft, or are you somewhere completely different?
Right.
It's like I can't ever rule out that this could be some kind of experiment with advanced technology, something that we're not aware of. Even at the intel level, a lot of us, because I have talked to so many people, and nobody has heard of anything that that they're aware of. That can do this kind of mind manipulation. Not from the human end. So. I had a point that I was going to, and suddenly I just completely forgot it. The screen changed, and I lost
Oh,
my train of
my
thought.
camera died.
Uh-oh.
God damn it. Yeah. I'm going to put you full screen if you don't mind for
No,
just
I
a
don't.
minute, and I'm going to swap out and I'm going to put the webcam on.
Okay. No worries.
I'll create a marker.
Yeah, good idea.
God damn it. I have two cameras, two DSLRs, and this one works better with the it just works better with the system. But the other camera, its battery life is much longer. This one's a bit older. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
It lasts a good amount of time in the field, so
No worries.
and in the field I can charge it on the go.
Yeah.
But unfortunately for podcasts I can't.
Yeah, no worries.
So now I gotta restructure. It looks like garbage, but I hate it.
Aw.
All right, back again. Now I have to look straight forward. All right, sorry about that.
That's okay. No worries. No worries.
All right, so we're about to get to the Mojave Desert.
Yes.
Mojave
Okay.
Desert.
Yeah, I remember what I was.
Yeah, so continue.
Okay. So just as when I was a child and I was taken inside of what I believe was inside of the craft, I really don't know that that's where I was. I could have been somewhere completely different. And I think about that from the transition from the tunnel into what so sorry about that. What I understand to be a base was seamless. There was like a seamless transition. It was just, there was one place there's tunnel, and then the next place there's this material that is not. And so there was nothing that was like this big ta-da, it was just suddenly
Right.
and there were beings that were standing inside of, the only way I know how to call it is like an alcove, a domed area, a central area where you can go several ways. there was the entrance where we were into the tunnel. Okay. Then there was an area next to it that was like a door that I believe was a door. I mean, it could have been, some kind of pulley system, like an elevator system or something like that. I have no idea. Never went in there, never opened, never saw it. But it was right there. And then there was a hallway. And then there was another one of those arch doors. And then over here is a completely black area. I can see nothing. It's
just
like
just a void.
It's a void. Isn't that interesting? I've always wondered about that void. There's nothing there. It's like but there is. I know intuitively that there is something there, but I cannot see it no matter how hard I try.
Do you think it's some sort of advanced cloaking?
Maybe. I think that I go, I end up in a hall, going down the hall and going into another room, right? And and in that room it looks like a medical room, like a medical exam room. Not like ours, but with similar things, like the bed that comes up out of the floor, it's obvious that it's made for a human being or some kind of physical being to lay on. It's very obvious what it is. It came up out of the floor beneath this, like some type of fixture that was over the bed, high up, and that had like light that came down. That was the texture of mist, but it was just light. Like if light could be mist, that's what it was. And
I have a good you made that very visual. I could see it.
Good. And so how mist just kind of fades away. Well, it went down into the body and then it just fades away. So it's just like, and I believe that it was some kind of diagnostics. But the reason that I brought this up earlier, rather than running through the conversation of everything, was because of that dark area. I'm on this table, right? But I can see me. They have literally removed my consciousness from my body. And the lavenderish being that I had been communicating with all this time was there. And was communicating directly with me. And I could also hear them communicating with one another. But I could hear it all in my mind. Like nobody was actually making auditory sounds or moving their mouths. They were consciousness to consciousness. And that's what they were doing with me. And as long as it was about me, or important, like about me, I think is all that it needed to be. I could hear it because it wasn't like I could hear everyone in the room. Okay.
Right. It was focused.
They had thoughts, but I wasn't hearing them. I wasn't hearing any kind of intentional communication unless it was intentional communication.
Right.
But what I noticed while I was there was that so I'm supine, which means that I'm laying on my back. My feet are, my toes are up and I can see beyond, before I'm removed from my body, I can see that beyond the end of the bed and up, there's a set of windows that are like one-way windows. You can't see into them. But it wasn't necessarily a mirror, but they were shaded in a way that I could not see anything behind them. And here I am, I'm in a room with multiple kinds of beings around me. I feel like, I can't quite get it, but I feel like there were other humans in the room that were on beds as well. I wasn't the only one there. Okay. Which they've stressed to me many times, you are not alone. You're not the only one. But I find that so suspicious that there are two things out of that I can't see. It's behind those windows, which I felt was intentional, and then this this just
This
empty.
void. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. That I also knew was intentional. I knew there was something there, and I knew I couldn't see it. I think that there may have been an entrance there, or something else there that has to do with human beings, like actual consciousnesses in these particular bodies, who
Right.
were observing in the room, and that may have been in that area, or for all I know, they could have been just all standing there looking at me, for all I know. But
Right.
the logical part of me says, when all of this is happening around me, who in the world would have to stand behind windows and be unseen? And the only thing I can think of is human beings.
Other
Complicit, know about what's
and David Grush comes out recently and and it's been rumored in the UFO community for as long as I can remember that at one point there was a meeting and there was an exchange for technology. So, and some of this might be true, some of it might not be, some of it's folklore, but there is definitely precedence for this. I mean, now David Grush is coming out and saying that there is some sort of agreement between at least one form of a non-human intelligence that may not be alien, but more interdimensional.
Sure.
So,
that's right.
I mean, all the puzzle pieces are coming together.
They sure are, and it's actually quite stunning.
Right. So you think people are observing
yes,
in a way.
I think probably the military, or maybe that's
these
not
shadowy
fair.
Governments that
some very powerful people. I would never be able to put a name to that. That would I don't that would even be
nor should you, because you couldn't know.
But whomever it was, it would have to be somebody that wouldn't want me to see them and to have even a trace of that memory. And not just me, but other people,
humans that were there in the
I feel like there were two other humans who may have been there.
Right, because that would stand out. That would definitely stand out if you were being taken into some sort of abduction scenario, which is already weird enough, right? And you're seeing these, other beings that look nothing like us.
That's right.
If you see a human, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb because it's going to be something familiar, and you're going to strap onto it, and that's not going to leave your brain.
Like I see them like a woman is closer, and then there's a man, but they're in different areas, and in between are, various what they call races, and not species. They call humanity a race, not a species, which I find really interesting.
That is really interesting.
It is, right? Like I'm still grappling with how to make sense of that in my day-to-day life,
Right. Right.
But it absolutely changed my life. Absolutely. My life has never been the same. It wasn't. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So bring me back.
Okay.
Bring me back into the cave.
Okay.
Into the base.
Okay. We're in the base. Okay.
Right. What was your? Was there any sort of anything that stuck out to you, or anything that you can smell? These beings that you met.
Clean. It was a very clean and sterile environment. Everything, even the hallways. I spend far too much time.
So this was a facility.
That's right.
Okay.
I spend far too much time every week at the VA, the local VA. I've been in many VAs. Okay. I've even been in, their multi-billion-dollar flagship in Aurora, and out, a suburb of Denver, Colorado. Been
Mhm.
there. There's art everywhere. Okay. I mean, we like to make things aesthetically pleasing. This place was sterile.
Okay.
There was nothing on the
Okay.
walls. Walls are bare. There's nothing. There's nothing. This place was sterile.
Okay. And why did you go into who brought you there?
Well, that's more of the story that, out of respect for them, I will give you a summation, but I want to make clear that they have never said that it didn't happen. They've just said that they don't remember it. They don't
Okay.
remember that, and they have not found a tunnel on their property. Okay,
Okay.
so these are important details. Which doesn't surprise me. It did for a while. It even discouraged me, but I things have developed in different ways since then. So
We can see that. We could see and listen, I'm not gonna say I don't want to say this, but people in that circumstance, I think if someone came knocking with a good amount of money,
that's what they've said.
yeah. So we could leave it at that, though.
Yeah,
But see, if you could just do the summation part.
sure, absolutely. I am at a coffee shop in the high desert, and I was with a friend of mine. We had just sat down and we're just having a pleasant conversation. I think just about the band that we had seen the night before, and the weather. It had been really terribly, terribly windy the night before. Like, we were going to go camping, and we ended up not doing that because it was so incredibly windy. Because I love camping in Joshua Tree National Park. So I had to bail on that. Ended up doing something different, and just got a hotel room. So anyway, we're having coffee, and a couple walks in, and I noticed them because me and the gentleman make eye contact as soon as they walk in, and they just make a
Okay.
beeline right over for where we're sitting. And so, my eyes never really left them. I was just kind of, watching them, and I smiled and said hi. And they came and introduced themselves, and, we all struck up a really lovely conversation that ended up on a discussion of aliens. That was how it was presented to me. At the time, I didn't understand what a misnomer that word is. And so I apologize, to everyone every time I use it, because it is a misnomer.
Yeah, if you actually go into the dictionary, there's not there is not a definition of the word alien that is in a positive
That's right.
connotation.
That's right. There
So
isn't.
it's actually really discriminatory. And
Absolutely. And that's
if we
don't
do
want us
have these others, then we don't, then I'll call them the others. They're the others until they give me their name.
yeah. Which
You know?
you might not ever get. But
And that's okay.
So we were exchanging stories about our experiences and about our health, and he told me some interesting facts that he later shared, some of them, but he does not remember talking about some of the things that I remember us talking about. But he invited me over to his home that was just, not too far away, and to meet meet the beings and to experience the energy and healing properties is, I think, one of the ways that he put it of his land. And so I was like, well, he told me about this tunnel that he had dug, and the circumstances around it, some of his contact with the beings, contact with them, with the craft, and them exiting a craft and speaking to him, just various contact stories. And then he became, just adamant that he needed to start digging this tunnel. And he had the resources to do it. I don't care what anybody says who doesn't live in the Mojave.
Yes.
If you don't live there, I don't want to hear it. Okay. Because yes, a person can excavate a tunnel with equipment. It can be done.
Yeah.
It's been done by hand. It can definitely be done by excavation equipment. So
absolutely.
Okay. So, but regardless of that, so he said that, that he had, what I remember is that him telling me that he had begun digging this tunnel, and that he had made a right-hand turn, and then he gave up for that night. Next time he went back, the wall, the solid area of rock that he hadn't excavated, where he had planned to, to make a right turn, was suddenly open, and there were the beings, and there were the base. There was the entrance. And
so
he said,
so at this time, you already know that there's something else in the world. Like, you already know that you've had encounters.
I'm still looking for evidence, though.
Yeah, but you were still curious, and the story intrigued you enough to as your old job would say, to investigate it a little bit further.
Absolutely.
So it's safe to say you were curious and you wanted to know more, and that you felt safe around this person enough to go onto the property.
And we took precautions as well. So, we took precautions. If I had not come back out of that tunnel, there were several people who would have been able to respond to that. Okay. So it was, cool. I did my due diligence.
That's good to know.
Myself. But yeah, I mean, I worked in intelligence. I'm not going to go to a stranger's house without making sure that, I can get out of there.
A contingency is in place. Yeah.
Yeah. And
it seems like, and
I found him authentic and trustworthy. I didn't feel like there was anything he was saying he was trying to pull my leg. His wife was quiet. She spoke. She did. She was very supportive of him. She didn't have any body language that suggested that she disagreed with anything that he said or that she felt differently about it. They were quite in sync with one another and incredibly friendly and nice people.
So again, in your expertise with the intelligence, there are no red flags coming up, and you want to you're curious and you want to explore a little bit further. And if what they're saying is true, the implications are fucking insane.
That's right. Right.
So let's go. I'd be the first one to go too.
Yeah, I was like, absolutely, of course. So we go to his property. He has a couple of other friends that arrive. Before they arrive, he tells me the story about teleportation. And he doesn't use that word. What he says is he nonchalantly walks over to this passage from one area of the room to the other that I believe there was a wooden door or I can't quite remember. There's a lot of wood. Okay. There's just a lot of wood in the area. And he hits like a beam above his head and he says, he's standing right in the center of this walkway. And hits the beam and says, "This is where they put me back when they're done with me." And I said, "What? What do you mean?" And he said, "Yeah, every time I've talked to them or met them, when we're done talking, I just end up right here." Yeah. Like suddenly he's just right there. And so now I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be the greatest day of my life, or, these people are out of
It's
their
gonna
mind.
be
They're going to kill me.
Yeah, it's gonna get real it's gonna get real fucking weird real quick.
That's exactly right. You're right. But
Yeah.
I felt very comfortable, other than the story itself was, it
Now
was
you're
very
about to
difficult.
face
But at the
teleportation.
same
Yeah.
time, after everything that I have been through recently, and having seen a craft as a child and knowing all of this, I'm thinking, if he could be telling the truth. He's
He could
probably
be.
telling the truth.
And that's what I mean, is you have this preconditioned truth to yourself that we're not alone. They're interacting with other humans. So
That's right.
there's credibility to that notion. And if this,
That's right.
again, so
Yes.
this all leads you. And if I was in your position, and
You would have
again,
gone.
if everything what you're saying is true,
Yeah.
then I would absolutely be geared up and doing what you're doing.
And
There's
I
just no
wasn't going to
question
wait
about it.
another second. It was like, we're doing this now, let's go.
Okay.
And so his friends came over. When they arrived, we went outside and we walked. And this part I remember very clearly, because I was having such a difficult time walking. I hadn't done this much walking since for the last year,
Right.
and I was in a place
Yeah.
where I was feeling better. I was feeling a little better right then. So I had been a little bit more active, but I still wasn't, I wasn't in any good shape. So I was struggling, and I remember thinking to myself, "Oh my God, I wonder if I'm going to make it." How embarrassed would I be if I need to stop and sit? How do I tell them? There's really nowhere to sit. So you're talking about just like sitting down on the dirt,
Sitting on the ground. Yeah.
which is fine. But I was like really trying. I was really just trying. I didn't want to be disabled, so I'm just like pulling out all my might. And I start receiving messages, like literally communication from various beings while we're walking. And like all of a sudden I got this hello that came in. It was so powerful and overwhelming that I could feel it. It was like a feeling, a pressure that was in the side of my head and my face. And it was almost like tactile, but and it was like a greeting. They were saying hello to me. And I threw my hands up to my head and I was like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah. And so I'm sure most of your audience will have already known this, but I have to disclose this because it needs to be addressed, and it will be addressed in my podcast in a very deep way, and I'm excited about it. But before we left, right before we left the coffee shop, the gentleman that I was with, or excuse me, the property owner, that gentleman, offered me some, what I thought was rosin. I guess they said that it was cannabis oil, and I may not have. I had live oil, okay, and I had medical cannabis card. I was using it pretty heavily. It helped my rehabilitation. I would go through physical therapy, and I would literally take in as much cannabis as my body could handle, and then go into physical therapy, and I could perform.
I would like to say this. If anyone tries to discredit your story because you smoked or ingested
Cannabis of any kind. I know.
cannabis. Sorry, the dog is barking at him
It's
right now.
okay.
Logan.
Let's see him.
Yeah. Well, in a minute. I don't know what he's getting all upset about. But if anyone tries to discredit it does not take a rocket scientist to understand that you do not have hallucinations. I smoke and ingest cannabis on a daily basis. You do not. If anything, it has only beneficial properties. Aside from when you do smoke it, you're smoking it, and it affects your lungs in that way. Far less than tobacco does. But cannabis use is now something is so widely recognized as having tremendous medical purposes, but recreationally it's also acceptable. So if anyone's going to sit there and try to discredit your story because you smoke or you smoked a joint or you took some cannabis oil before you hiked, it is often used for pain if it is in that tincture state or that oil state. So when I take my hikes in the morning, I bring out a couple joints with me. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, that's life.
I have to tell you that nothing. This is.
It just sucks that you have to explain that.
It does, but I think that we're really close to that phase being over. I think the audience that really will entertain that is a very small audience, because like you said, we have more cannabis users now in the United States than we've ever had in the history of the United States. There are people who have medicinal and recreational usage and benefits, and in all of its forms. Okay, all kinds of concentrates. And what you don't have is a lot of people like me walking around saying that, hey, this started, before I was even, ingesting any kind of cannabis product, a year before. And then all of a sudden, I think that we would just have a lot more people having those kinds of experiences. And furthermore, what really I want to stress is that nothing was out of place. Like, nobody looked odd. I wasn't seeing any kind of visuals or, people could have described like geometrics and shapes and prisms and, in their field of vision, and how everything looks like it's alive and moving. And I mean, I've heard all of that stuff. Nothing like that was going on.
That's more common.
I would understand, I must be experiencing a side effect of whatever I just ingested. Nothing like that was happening. I was fully aware of what was going on, of who I was with. I was having conversations. I was listening to conversations. I was participating. And then every once in a while, I would throw my hands up to my head and go, what the, F is going on here? Because I would get this. The closer that we got to the tunnel, the more extreme it happened. So then we get there, they pull back the tunnel, you get a whiff of the air, we go in, and everything is the same. It's dark, it's cool. It's dirt and rocks, it's rustic. What
does it smell like?
Like the desert. I mean, it's just like
the desert, yeah.
Yeah, nothing was
no sulfur.
I'm still thinking, no, nothing like that. Like, we're walking, I've got my phone out, I'm using the flashlight, right? And I'm watching my footing, because they don't know that I have a positive Romberg, which means that when I can't see very well, I can lose my balance. So I was watching the ground and where I was stepping, and I was looking up, and they've got lights on, and I think there was a flashlight, but there were headlights, or the headlamps. And
Yep.
and all of that was completely normal. I mean, I'm a lucid person walking through this tunnel, thinking now, he says, oh, there's a light up ahead. That's where we're going to turn. And suddenly, you can see a faint light. And we get closer and it's brighter and brighter. And I'm thinking he's pulling my leg. I'm honestly starting to think he's pulling my leg.
Right.
And because everything is fine, Ty. Nothing is weird. There's nothing that makes me feel like I am out of place or
in an alien base.
And can't think. I mean, I'm having very clear thoughts. We get there, we turn the corner, and they're standing there, and I just stop. I stop. I come to a halt for a second, and then they speak to me through conscious communication, and I think back, I knew it, and I just step into the base, just step right in. No hesitation, none whatsoever.
Whew. So you take a turn into you took a turn into oblivion.
Yeah, right.
So you turn the corner and you're face to face with what?
There is what I would call a small droid, and because I don't believe that it's some kind of biomechanical avatar. I don't know if there was a consciousness within it, or if it's like a remote, if it's like a drone, literally,
Right.
But it was communicating with me, and was actually communicating with the other people that were there. They wanted. I saw there were 3 tall, what I now know to be tall whites, but I wouldn't have called them that at the time. I would have just said, these tall, very, very pale, blonde hair that's down near white, very beautiful. They look a lot of like blue-eyed, tall, beautiful, and dressed in clothes. They're wearing clothes. Like they're wearing the only thing I know how to compare it to would be like a wetsuit, a cold wetsuit.
Right. Very tight.
Very tight. And they're telling him that he can't come in. He's arguing with them because he doesn't want to leave me. He's telling them, that he's responsible for me, and that he's not going.
This is the gentleman that brought you in,
who brought me there. That's right. And so he's saying, basically, I don't want to leave. Everybody else has walked off. They like told them to go, and they were just like, okay, and they literally walked out and walked. I'm presuming completely out of the tunnel. And the next time I saw them, they were all in the house. But he said that he wouldn't leave. He was adamant. And they were like, okay, fine, you can stay there. And so while I went, and when I came back, he was still standing, like, I want to say almost like suspended animation. When I saw him, it was like he was in the exact same position, the exact same everything, expression. He was just like suspended animation. And then all of a sudden, it's like he looks at me, and when we make eye contact, he steps into the base, and in the next second, we are in his door, his entryway, right there,
underneath the panel.
Yep, and he
just where he said,
I'm yelling, "What the fuck is just happened?" And he says, and I remember him. He was touching me. He said, "What did they say to you? What did they tell you?"
That's what I want to know.
So, at that point, I was incredibly overwhelmed by the entire experience. I was, I believe, more than anything, in a state of shock. I sat down in a chair and just sat there, almost like feeling damn near catatonic. I don't even know how else to explain it. Shock, I think. I think I was in shock. Yeah. So what they told me was that that there are cyclical changes that happen to the material world or worlds. So that humanity is about to go through an area. We're already in. So it's always so hard to give the elevator speech. That we're in that we're in a place that we have to learn to grow and expand our consciousness, essentially. Okay. What the being had been saying in my room was expanded upon more deeply in the base. I was told that we're coming up to the end of a cycle, that we have been in a cycle of birth and rebirth, that we can choose at this time to continue in this this material manifestation, this particular manifestation in this world, or we can choose to transcend into the next manifestation, physical manifestation that we take, that is all natural, that essentially it's been designed this way for our conscious development, so that we can fully awaken and to fully realize, come into our full self-realization, and return back to where we came from, and that this is a temporary learning experience, and that because of what we're about to go through at the end of this cycle, that there are going to be some trials and tests that we go through that are meant to give us options or choices about if we want to serve ourselves or if we want to serve others, if we want to, continue in this material experience, or if we're looking to transcend to the next. What is it that we are trying to accomplish? Reminding us that we're not necessarily, that the body may be of the earth, but that the consciousness itself is one with absolutely everything, and that we're just having these very localized, enhanced experiences. So we're part of a greater collective that is able to have a very localized experience, and that us this sense, this identity of Thai and Anjali, but that it's only temporary.
It's almost a shared experience for
absolutely.
In a way, it's like
to inform the next creation.
Yeah, and it makes sense, because if you think about humanity, right? Humanity has developed, and if you want to say this, if you want to go with this route, evolved, I think, because on the cosmic scale, people don't realize that the brain size of Homo sapien basically just doubled overnight on a cosmic scale. I mean, it took thousands and thousands of years, but it essentially in the cosmic scheme, right? Yeah. And all of a sudden, we're this material. All we want to do is build and create, and we keep looking to the stars, and it's like we have this obsession with returning to the stars. In all of our religious texts, it talks about, transcending this mortal realm and going to the next, and there's
we could talk about it for years, right?
And and it's funny, because I think the religions of the world, they all have a little piece of the puzzle, and it's the same with the UFO. It's the same with the UFO community. If once we step back and we realize that we've been factionalized and pitted against each other, right? In order to
To
distract and to
prevent,
keep
yes, to
right,
prevent us
to
from awakening.
prevent us from working together and awakening. And do we want to just create the next iPhone? Because we're done evolving physically.
Right.
We're the top of the food chain. So now
Well,
our evolution either goes two ways, right? It either
Yeah.
goes into this mysterious, holistic, merge with AI route, or we transcend and evolve our consciousness. And like you said, there's the materialistic way where we merge with technology in my mind, and then there's the consciousness evolving route where we raise our frequency as a species, as a race, and that's at least my opinion. I'm not sure
That's
of
great.
if
I
yeah
enjoy hearing it. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, the it's funny because Linda Moulton Howe's a good friend of the show, and she really talks about she talks about the tall whites a lot. So how many beings were there?
I couldn't tell you. I'm going to guess somewhere between 20 and 40 were in the room. It was
Wow.
a very large room. When I say room, it's like I would consider it to be akin to like a surgery theater, you know.
Okay.
Um,
Right.
so
Right.
um, that's that's kind of the feel of it. A large room, an observatory above. Typically you can see who's observing you there. You cannot. Typically, you're not
Mm-hmm.
surrounded by, beings that appear to be, of non-human nature. So, I mean, there were definitely some things about it. But as soon as I stepped in, I was completely comfortable. I think that's what the
Calm.
visits had been for. Absolutely. I had no hesitation whatsoever.
Right. Right. You
Yeah.
said that. You said no hesitation at all to walk in
Yeah.
there, and so now you're sitting on the couch and you're trying to process what just happened, and you're in a
Yeah.
catatonic state.
I feel
And this is
I don't
something.
know that I was actually in that state, but I could not externalize very much because my mind was just like, what happened? What did we
Yeah.
just hear? I was trying to make sense of what I understood and what I
Okay.
could remember. And I was trying to figure out in that moment if it had happened or if I was the subject of some kind of experiment. That's
Some
that's
sort
what
of
I was thinking, you
yeah.
know.
There's one of two options,
Yeah.
right? It's one.
Or
It's
else.
one or the other. It was genuine, or it
Yeah.
was some sort of really dark experiment. And sadly, again, you cannot
No.
technically count that out,
That's
because
right.
there's there's a history of this
There is.
kind of
Yeah.
mistreatment towards military and government officials.
Yes.
We talk about Havana syndrome and other direct energy weapon
Mhm.
thing attacks
Yeah.
on people, and
Mm.
it's still kind of what they're calling pseudoscience, but I think it's becoming more real. But all right, after this, I mean, this must be a lot to happen all at once. So, I mean, it must have taken you a while to process, but what inevitably led you to come out and sit in front of the Lincoln Memorial and do what you did? That takes balls.
Well, I have a lot of that apparently. Um I'm a very courageous person. They asked me to. They asked me to come forward. They told me that it was time to do it, and that it was. They. I tried to fight. They wanted me to go to DC. I wanted to do it at Mount Rushmore because it was
Ooh,
just
that would have been so cool.
Yeah, and it was just down the street.
But yeah,
But they wanted me at the Lincoln Memorial, and they wanted it in, they wanted me to tell to unveil basically who I was, to almost dissolve who that was so that I would have no hesitations. It was like a cutting of ties, essentially, by coming forward and telling, um, going public and giving my alphabet soup of credentials. I knew who I was. I understood. It's like it all came together, and I was like, I see. I understand what you're doing now. I'm like, yeah, you understand that who you're talking to now. And I realized that I didn't know this until the press conference was beginning, that that I was there to talk to DC, not to the public. That I was there to talk to my peers and to the military, and the federal government. And so that's what I did. I cut my tie by revealing everything that I did about the kind of work that I had done and who I was. Every school I had ever attended, from elementary on up, to sever, like, there's nothing you can do to prevent this from happening now, because I have dissolved my who I was in this moment by essentially handing it all over to everyone and saying, here, take me, do what you want.
Right.
I relinquish. This is all worldly bullshit. I don't need any of it, because listen to what I've got to tell you now. And so it was, for me, it was a shift in a before and after. And yeah, so that's how that ended up happening. We began planning it in June, and told people in July, and then executed in August.
So how did you go about, because, you weren't, I'm not saying this in a bad way. It's not like you were known, right? Because this is your coming out.
Right. Nobody knew who I was.
As,
yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're all there at one point.
Yeah.
So what sources did you use to get the story out there enough to where people were going to want to show up? Did you use things like Reddit, Twitter,
Reddit and Twitter? I think I might have mentioned it on LinkedIn. Word of mouth.
Okay.
That was really it. I did release. We did release a press release. We knew that it wasn't going to get much traction. The beings themselves, they prepared me for what it was going to look like, but they weren't telling me everything. It was like they were holding pieces of it back. So I didn't know, I knew that there weren't going to be a lot of people there. I didn't realize that I was there to talk to DC. I was hoping that there would be more people than there were. I didn't realize that somehow the permit that I had applied for and had received, somehow they didn't have record of it. I mean, it was like all of it was it was shocking. It was a shocking day. But as soon as I began talking, like I said, I just came into a flow, and I felt like I was able to convey what they were communicating accurately. So
yeah. And I mean, it was widely reported on in the UFO community. And, people like John Ramirez of the CIA have backed you up. And,
yeah,
I know there was kind of an issue with the property owner, and that's why you can't
legal concerns,
yeah.
Monetary
So,
concerns, I think. So I think those two things go hand in hand, really.
Right. So what are the next stages for this? Because we're still in the cycle. We can see
That's right.
that we are teetering on the edge of
Yes.
World War III right now.
No, no, no. We're
If
already in
China,
world. We're
yeah,
not
if
teetering.
China makes a move on Taiwan, it's over. It's
Look,
it's
what we
it will begin properly. And
I
I
think
think
it's done, and that what is actually going to happen is that something will happen that will end it, and that's what we should be more concerned about. It's how quickly it may end rather than where we are in it, because it started a couple of years ago, Ty. I was watching the ramp up of it back in 2014. By 2017, I thought within the next few years, and it was 2022 when I would feel comfortable saying, okay, we are now in a hot war. We are now, this is World War III. We have stopped the buildup. We're in it now, and it's being fought in ways that are not
traditional.
and are also being kept very much under wraps in the American media. It's best if we, just keep
Out of
watching
sight, because
our television shows and,
yep, because for the American public, it's out of sight, out of mind.
yeah,
Right?
that's right.
Everyone's quick to put a Ukraine flag on their doorstep and
then walk away.
and then be like, I did my and put a filter on their Facebook profile picture, and they're like, I did my part. I contributed. Okay.
Well, I mean, I think
cool.
that is
I get it.
Do
Do
it
your
is.
thing. It is. And I'm not saying it's not something that we should do, but
Yeah.
we do need to get more involved in our future, because we did not give. So someone already. How are we a species that doesn't know its own origin story? Right? Why and why are we selling off our sequel to the military industrial complex? Who gave them the permission? Yeah, who gave them permission to keep these kind of secrets from
handed
us?
it to them. We're just like,
And we're paying for the secrecy to be kept upon us.
yeah, we are. We are actually funding it. We made up this thing called currency. We attributed value to it, and then we made it this made up thing that suddenly can control our lives, and we give it away for free. Yeah, it's wonderful.
We'll spend, like I said, we'll spend billions of dollars in Ukraine, but back home we have tent cities in all major cities, and our southern border, it's just absolutely a mess right now, and the immigration. I don't want to get into politics again, but we have a lot of problems at home, and I just think we need to start focusing.
Because when you say that we have problems at this home, at home, well, you're only saying that because of the faction of countries and borders. The truth is
these are, again, imaginary lines.
Exactly. That have been.
We are one race.
That's right. We are
like
one.
you said earlier.
Right.
So what are the next steps for you? How do we get what your original mission was done at a different location? How do we get it done? How do we get more information out there?
One of the things that I have upcoming is, and I know I've been saying this for a little while, and everybody just has to be patient with me because I've had some health obstacles that I'm still battling actively every day. So it's been a little delayed, but I have a podcast that is coming up. It'll be a well-produced podcast we will in depth go into every message that is of any value that I have received and that I receive will be discussed in depth from a scientific and a spiritual, a materialist and a physics level, so that we can together try to bring our resources and our minds to think about this one thing that is really the only thing worth thinking about, and that is what are our origins, why are we here, and who are we, who
What is our
are we
purpose?
actually.
Yeah.
Is there, where's the line between body, mind, and spirit? What is consciousness? How is everything alive? How could we have other beings that are existing right here with us that not everyone can be or have been aware of? How do these things happen? What are the cycles that we go through? Are they spiritual? Are they physical? Are they material? What exactly are they? We're going to look at all of those things and unpack them with some very sublime guests that I'm excited to have on the show. So
Well, that's
that'll be I'm hoping that we will be able to release the videos this year, like in 2024, that we will get up and moving. I think they keep telling me, oh, it's going to go a lot faster than you think it does, and I'm kind of like, I've heard that before. You know what I mean? And so
right.
it's
Yeah.
like, don't tell me,
Yeah.
show me how fast it's going to go. So it's going to
Right.
go as fast as it should, and I think that we need to
Well,
listen
I'm gonna
less
be
and listen more to the
yeah.
fact that things are moving and happening every day, and have it on pretty good authority that it's actually speeding up. And so,
Yes.
and I understand what my role is in this, and so I'm just going to be amplifying that.
What an absolute great, brilliant way to end it. I think that's an amazing, amazing thing. And I'm going to be traveling a lot this summer for conferences and filming various projects. So if you're in Hollywood when I'm there, we'll make sure to stop by.
Wonderful. I would love that.
But you're an amazing,
drive through my area. If you do any cross country driving, let me know, and see if
absolutely.
we can.
Well, stick around after the credits roll, and I do have a couple questions to ask you before you go. So no, it was great to have you on. And do you I know you have social media, or do you have social media anymore?
Yes, I do. You can find me on Twitter, on YouTube. I don't really use Rumble and Instagram yet. But of course, all these things will be changing. They will be developing. But my handle is always ANJALI on Gaia. So just one word,
Yep.
ANJALI on Gaia. So at me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you've been an absolutely like I said, fantastic guest, and you're always welcome back on the show. And
Thank you.
I really yeah, I really look forward to any conversations that we get to have in the future, and if there's anything that we could work on together, I'd be game for that. So that, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening on Apple, on Spotify, on any of those podcast platforms, it really does help if you leave like a 5 or star rating and a written review on Apple, and then a star rating on anywhere else you can, and to follow the show on all the podcast platforms, whatever one you listen on. If you're watching on YouTube, obviously hit that like button, subscribe to the show if you like the content. There's plenty more of that where it came from. And if you are a member, you're probably watching this video early. You gain access to tons of benefits, including a gift after 1 year consecutive membership, ad-free content, all that good stuff. So bonus material. And again, when we start filming the next project, I'll be releasing more behind the scenes. I just wrapped on a project with dealing with the Salem witch trials, so I put a lot of that behind the scenes content out. So if you want, hit join, support the show, and support people like
Bye.